Welcome to the videos, guys, and this video today is about should Shell sponsor British cycling. And in general, we have these petrochemical companies and people are raising an eyebrow when they're supporting things like sport and especially cycling, because cycling is the most efficient form of transport when you get on a bike. And then you've got someone like these petrochemical companies that are selling products that is being promoted as damaging the planet, and these things shall not meet. But British cycling are benefiting from some money and some sponsorship, and that may enhance cycling. So there's kind of two arguments to the story here, but there really is a lot more depth to this relationship and why we should probably think about raising an eyebrow when we have these relationships. So let's roll the intro and let's have a bit of a discussion about what are the facts and situations which have happened in our industrialization in the modern world. Well, these petrochemical countries have created a lot of wealth for countries, and the Dutch and also the northern countries in Europe and also here in Australia, and any place that has a lot of these sorts of resources, petrochemical resources, has really done well, like the Middle East and the Saudi Arabia countries and so forth. So that's brought a lot of money in and raised a lot of people's standard of living. So, excuse me, it's brought a lot of people out of poverty who have been able to capture this petrochemical products out of the ground and sell them all around the world. And there's a lot of lead on because all of logistics is run on petrochemical products. We also have our energy, which electricity is run a lot of petrochemical products, and we're moving more and more to gas. So really, is it such a bad thing that we're using these petrochemical products? Because it's created a lot of wealth in the world, and it's also over the last 30 or 40 years raised a lot of people out of poverty. A lot of people on average now are richer because of industrialization and using these petrochemical products. It provides electricity, it provides transport, and also provides heating for a lot of countries. So there is a lot of upsides to the use and mining of these petrochemical products like Shell, BP, and Woodside and so forth. But in modern times, a lot of people have raised an eyebrow on this because of climate change. And we're even having it here in Australia. Woodside is a bit on the nose because they're sponsoring a football club here in Australia and people don't really like it. And now we have Shell sponsoring British cycling. And of course, that's raised an eyebrow as well. But then we need to look at both sides of the coin, because if these big companies are giving these cycling organizations money, then that may actually heighten the level of cycling. And especially if in the commuting space, if people are getting more out of cars, getting onto bicycles, that could have a net benefit, even though companies like Shell and BP and that may actually miss out on some revenue. But it's moving towards reducing at a personal level our use of petrochemical products. Now, the next question is, can we really do without petrochemical products? Now, I would like to put forward, because I do have some expertise in this area, that we really can't at this point in time. There is no technology to replace petrochemical products as is. Now, I know people can say, oh, yeah, we have electric cars and we can get rid of internal combustion engines and all those sorts of things. But when you get an electric car, your electricity needs to come from some sort of generation. And people may say, well, this generation can come from wind and solar and batteries. But what you need to understand at this point in time, those products, even though they may be commercially available, they're not they're really more of a band-aid at the moment rather than a replacement for traditional thermal type power stations. And really the only commercial energy that we can use at the moment is really going to replace that is nuclear. And of course, that's a little bit on the nose currently. And then there's also the dangers that we're having in the Ukraine-Russian war, where nuclear power stations are at risk because they're right in the fighting of these areas, and people threaten to damage these nuclear power stations because that could wipe out one side of the enemy or the other. So there is this worry about nuclear, even though whilst they're being run, they have zero emissions and they don't do any damage to the environment. So really, these are the only real replacement currently that we can have for continuous dispatchable energy. So should we really punish these companies like Shell and Woodside that are producing these energies that we're still heavily reliant on? And what we will see is these companies, as technology changes, will move to other businesses that will be, as we say, more green in the future, because as one product becomes less viable, people look for a different business model to move into. So that'll be the nature of things. And I don't think we should be saying, hey, and wagging our finger and say, naughty, naughty, because in the past, we've wanted these companies and we've wanted this energy. And actually, at the moment, there is a lot of discussion and toing and froing about energy because we still need a lot of it. And this Ukraine-Russia war has really changed the mix of using hydrocarbons or petrochemical type products in the world to meet our needs, our normal needs of the life and the lifestyle that we've all been accustomed to. We're all not going to go and not have lights and not have electricity and start walking everywhere. That's just not going to happen. We all want our conveniences, and the only way we can have that at this point in time is through petrochemical companies and using hydrocarbons. So in conclusion, we need to also look at the fact that plastics are also come from hydrocarbons or petrochemical products. So when we go out and buy our carbon bike, the actual resins that are used in that carbon bike actually come from petrochemicals. And also all of these plastics that we have for all of our products, generally and mostly they come from hydrocarbons or petrochemical products. So are we willing to give up all of that stuff when there's no real replacement currently for those type of products, at least not at the same price point that we would want them? And even if we say, yeah, hey, there's all these other things, there's generally a huge price hike to use them. And the problem with that is, yeah, the Western world or the rich nations may be able to do that, but poor countries can't. They can't afford to move to this green technology. It's very, very expensive. It's nowhere near as cheap as using thermal type generation to make electricity or to drive your vehicles and so forth. And there just not is the infrastructure currently to switch completely over to electric cars. So we still need Shell, we still need BP, we still need Woodside, we still need these companies. They're very much are reliant on all of our modern type lifestyles. And that was seen when we had the problem with the Ukraine-Russia war and they weren't going to supply gas and oil to Europe. People were talking about people freezing in the winter. So we really need these petrochemical products. So when we come back now to the simple question, should Shell sponsor British cycling? Well, I would say, hey, look, we're probably getting a little bit too excited here, because I think that if British cycling can sustain some monies into the future through Shell, I don't think we should be too critical about that. And it's the same in Australia. If Woodside are sponsoring a football team, we shouldn't be too critical of that. Maybe they have a bit of a bad reputation because of the product they make, and that was the same with cigarettes years and years ago. And over the period of time, we have a shift from those products to other products. But really, people need to understand that our lifestyle today revolves heavily on petrochemical products, and there is no real replacement currently. They like to put out there is, but on a replacement scale, as an exhilaration type generation there is, but as a replacement, the only thing that is really viable and commercial or becoming commercial very soon is nuclear. So unless we want to go nuclear and then we want to run everything off electricity because the nuclear energy then is very clean, we really not got a lot of options, and we still need to be involved and buy products from companies like Shell, BP, Woodside, and all the rest of them that produce petrochemical products. Well, anyway, guys, are you a person that thinks we should just ban all these type of petrochemical companies that have actually raised our lifestyle in the past to what we have today? Or should we say, hey, look, these companies are, who cares who sponsors who? So what? Leave your comments down below. What do you think? Are you on the green side, or are you on the more sort of capitalist side? Well, that's where I'm going to leave it, guys, because I think it's quite an interesting question, and it's something that does affect our whole lifestyle and many, many people around the world, how we play our cards on this. Anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it, and I will see you next vid.